This is chapter 1 of Pasquala. It's called The Hiding Place. Mother and I stayed very still, crouching near the black back wall of the cave. We had been hiding in the old cave for a long time, and my arms and legs ached from sitting still for so long. The musty smell of the cave made me wrinkle my nose. Mother held her hand to my face, warning me not to sneeze. Her look told me that we had to be very quiet. Without a sound, I stretched my legs and I looked at the cave walls. Leaning forward, I stared at the lines painted on the wall. My eyes followed the path of the markings until I found the pictographs, the painted pictures on the cave walls. I knew I could not move to touch them as I had so many times before. Looking at the pictographs made me think about the times I had come to this cave with my mother and father and other Yokuts, tribal members, to watch special ceremonies. I remembered my father, an elder of the tribe, singing with the men singers. I could sit close to the singers, listening to their voices and tapping my foot to the rhythm of the clapsticks. I remembered how I listened for the footsteps of the dancers as they entered the cave in single file, and how their feather skirts swayed back and forth when they moved their bare feet to the music. Suddenly, a sound interrupted my thoughts. I knew I should be listening for the footsteps of the strangers, not the footsteps of dancers. Silently, my mother moved in front of me. She turned her head and listened to the noise near the opening of the cave. The willow branches that covered the opening of the cave were slowly parted. In the dim light, I could see the shape of a man bending down to enter our hiding place. A shiver ran through my body. Was this man a soldado from mission far over the hills? Had he come to look for Chumash Indians who had run away from the mission? I covered my eyes with my hands and turned away from the man. I pressed my body against the cold wall of the cave, hoping the man wouldn't see me. A hand touched my shoulder. I opened my eyes, looked up, and there stood my father. He told us that we no longer had to stay hidden in the cave, that he had come to take us back to our village. The worried look left my mother's face. We were no longer afraid. Stepping out of the dark cave, I shielded my eyes from the bright sunlight. Father told us that soldados had been seen that morning riding their large brown horses along the trail that led through the tall patches of the tules. They were following the well-worn path along the shores of the lake leading to our village. The soldados were looking for Chumash Indians who had ran away from the missions near the ocean. When the soldados entered our village, most of us were not in the village at that time. Many of our men had been fishing the lake or were in the marshes setting nets for birds and ducks. I had been with my mother and some of the other women and children on the shores of the lake cutting and gathering large bundles of tules. While we were working, Mother looked up and saw puffs of smoke that were rising from an Indian village west of us. Mother yelled a warning that strangers were nearby. Mother and I had run from the marshes to the safety of the secret cave, so they had hidden in the thick patches of tules. This was not the first time that strangers had come to our valley, and we knew where to hide when we wanted to keep out of sight. Walking back to our village, I knelt down in the path and traced my fingers around one of the hoof prints that had been left by the soldados' horses. I shuddered to think that the soldados had ridden their horses along the same path this very morning. Father showed us where he had hidden in a thick clump of tall tules not far from the path. Father had been so close to the leather-jacketed soldados that he could smell the sweat of their hard-ridden horses. Our hearts were glad that Father had found a safe hiding place in the tules. That evening, everyone in our kawe, our large tule-matted home, gathered together and talked excitedly about the frightening soldados and why they had come. Lying on my tule mat, wrapped in my rabbit skin blanket, I listened to the low murmur of the grown-up voices. The chief of our tribe said that more and more soldados were coming to our valley, but Father said our hiding places were good and we would always be safe. The talking went on, and I heard a new word, traitors. Who were they? Would we have to hide from them when they came? The soft voices became a blur in my head. I could no longer keep my eyes open, and soon I fell fast asleep on my tule mat.